So this week's class has me thinking about smart interfaces, and also the disconnect between coders who actually understand what's going on behind the scenes, and amateurs who need tools to scaffold them to be able to do complex things with computers. So why I was thinking about this, probably obvious, is because of Data Wrangler. Um, Data Wrangler, I think, is a really cool idea, because a lot of people don't understand much about databases, data manipulation, and particular data cleaning. And if you don't know many of the commands, data cleaning can be a really big problem. So this is really great. But I do think there's a few lessons we can gather from thinking about A, why Data Wrangler was created, and B, how it actually was implemented when it was created. So to begin with, I'll talk about B. I think that the implementation actually highlights computer scientists' failed attempts at being able to create user-centered materials. So this program, while it was actually an attempt, so I do have to give credit to that, because a lot of programming languages and specialty programs, nobody makes attempts to create stuff that's like user-centered. They create software that's customizable that they hope to sell to a particular user, and then when you want to customize it further or whatever, they're just going to make updates and create more products that you can buy. So I do give them accolades for that. However, I think that the inference scheme on there was not very well designed. It's also quite confusing and traps you all the time. So in some ways, it kind of shows how disconnected the attempt to make user-centered software is from what actually users want. I'm not sure that creating a fully interactive screen where you just click and it starts making suggestions ends up being as good as you think, because you need a pretty good idea what any individual user actually wants and what their thought process is. So in some ways, this suggestion base needs to be sort of normalized to a given user and what kind of things they actually want to do. And now that we're there, it brings me to the first thing I talked about at the beginning of this reflection video, which is computer scientists actually what's going on behind the scenes whenever users or smart interfaces are made, and is this helping user-centered design work? So now, Tom, I know you are someone who focuses on this, so I feel like there could be a fruitful conversation between us on this. So recently I've been having a lot of discussion with a computer scientist in the area who's involved in university stuff. His name is Antranig Bosman. You may know him. We've been talking a lot about the fact that computer science makes tools for other computer scientists. So when someone makes a tool, they make a tool with another computer scientist in mind. They build off of a module that's already out there, and they don't really think about end user problematics. And this is actually, I think, widening. So things like Data Wrangler, I think, actually widen that gap that's already existent, where you have computer scientists making these advanced tools for one another. Then you have an end user try to get into some kind of software, some kind of programming for some particular purpose, and at that entry point, what they find is when they actually, once they get the hang of it, solve some basic problems, once they start trying to get to use the software for their very particular purposes, what happens is they find themselves standing on the edge of a cliff, where in order to get to the next level of programming, to solve their actual problems, their actual needs, they need to learn a whole ton of stuff, which involves a ton of expertise. Which we could say this is just because computer science is a very specialized discipline, but we could also say that languages are just being designed improperly because they don't scaffold learning. So there's no entrance point for an amateur or someone in between amateur and experts. Things are just built with experts in mind. So I think that building something like Data Wrangler hurts this because what you do is you separate users even further from what's really going on. Now, I will admit the idea of getting a script out of it, it ameliorates this issue a little bit from Data Wrangler, because then you can look at a script and maybe try to learn a little bit about what was actually happening in all these transformations you were doing. Though, if I had to guess, I would guess people would have some trouble. If they were amateurs using Data Wrangler, they'd have trouble taking that script and actually implementing it to something meaningful. So anyways, all these reflections sum up to the fact that I'm concerned about the fact that we need to make things with users in mind more and not other computer scientists. How to do that is hard, but it's something to think about. So, yep, that's my reflection.